What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fight Network's Downtown Studios. I'm John Ramdian alongside Robin Black. Bellator 170 went down in Los Angeles this past weekend. The main event, Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen. Tito Ortiz gets the submission victory, leaving the great sport of mixed martial arts possibly forever. Maybe not. We've seen so many of these great legends try to call it a day, but the fight game, it seems that they just can't get out of. But a guy like Tito Ortiz made his professional mixed martial arts debut back in 1997, May of 1997, and the things that he's been able to accomplish during that time. He grew up, and there was no mixed martial arts. There was no such thing. And then he becomes an icon of this incredible sport.
Yeah, and happy for Tito to retire on a high. And there's different areas of controversy on this fight. Chael, all kinds of stuff. Look for it on our YouTube page. We're going to talk about Chael. We're going to talk about controversy on 5 rounds today. We will probably delve deeper into some of the history of professional wrestling and selling fights and works and those kinds of things. But for this, for the purpose of this conversation, let's talk about Tito. And you know, he's had an up and down thing. He's been a part of that sort of the early star era of fighting, where people knew about fighting because Tito was fighting Randy, or Chuck and Tito, you know, and he'll be remembered for that. Dana White was his first manager. I heard that Dana White congratulated him on going out on top. So it's good. I mean, we should take some time this week, maybe take a look back, maybe we'll share a couple old Tito stories and stuff, because that guy played an important role. We often forget about history, or we don't pay him enough attention and enough reverence, but Tito's an important part of fighting history.
I think one of the reasons why we need to remember fighters like Tito Ortiz, and there haven't been a whole lot of them, is if there wasn't Tito Ortiz, there wouldn't be this pool of people interested in the sport. The sport grew, and then some of these other people, it's like, oh, Tito's my guy. Young kids getting into the sport because of Tito Ortiz. Just like so many fighters got into the sport. Kelvin Gastelum said he got into the sport because of George St. Pierre. Tito Ortiz affected so many people, and just his contributions to the sport. You talk about his feuds with Ken Shamrock and with Frank Shamrock and Chuck Liddell and Vitor and Randy and Vanderlei, some of the biggest names. And because of those feuds, then there was the rivalry between the UFC and Pride, and all of this buildup. And the fan base just kept growing and growing and growing. And then Mark Coleman, they called him the father of ground and pound. Then Tito Ortiz really perfected it and made it something that everybody else had to get on top of. And just the fact that he helped the sport grow, he was a personality, he made money, and showed other people that if you get into this game, you can make money, and he helped build a sport.
When I think of somebody striking somebody in guard and opening up and blading back to create power and being ferocious with ground striking in a guard, I think of Tito Ortiz. You know, when you think of the great celebrations and the great walkouts and all that kind of nonsense that people like, you can't help but think of Tito Ortiz. If it's only one or it's only the other, great fighter, big fights, exciting. If it's one or two of those things, maybe we don't remember fighters on the level that we're going to remember Tito Ortiz. But when you have every element of the game, of the technical game, of the martial arts game, of the combat game, and all the other stuff, that's when you remember guys like Tito Ortiz.
I think one of the things we like about Tito Ortiz is because he always sold the fights. He always got people interested in coming into the cards to tune into the events. And that's when the UFC and mixed martial arts was so good, because even though Tito was at the top of the marquee, there were so many other great fighters. Robbie Lawler was on those cards, Matt Hughes and Jens Pulver, and just so many great fighters that when the fans tuned in to see Tito Ortiz before they got to the main event, they got to witness real combat and seeing the truths of mixed martial arts and what actually was proven inside of the cage.
Yeah, and you think about 1997. You know, that doesn't seem like that long ago, although we commentated some fights on a couple weekends ago at TKO, and one of the fighters was born in 1999.
Yeah.
And he was a spectacular fighter. Young Tony Laramie was fighting Keith Lee, who was born around 1997. These are guys who were created in an era where Tito Ortiz and this type of fighting already existed. And you see what the building blocks of an 18-year-old fighting a 20-year-old, the level is just unbelievable. But you can't get there without going through Tito and Randy and Chuck. They're an important part. Guys like this should always be remembered. I know they won't. I won't. No, they won't, because where we live now, we're a lot more. We're going to have another conversation. It's going to be about Chael, and it's going to be about controversy. And more people are interested in controversy than history. That's for darn sure. But you should remember these guys. You should understand that you are not here without having gone through those guys' eras.
For Tito Ortiz, as I pointed out before, he's a fighter at heart. Fighters love to fight. I've learned that during my time here at Fight Network. Is that a decision he's decided to hang up the gloves? Is that something you have to think about for a long time? It wasn't that long ago that you decided to call it a day.
Yeah, it's a complex thing for a lot of these guys. First of all, does an athlete have the money and the resources that they can carry on without fighting, without having to go, oh man, I need $100,000. I wonder if Ken Shamrock will fight me again. So if you have the money, and it sounds like Tito has some resources, so then you don't have to do it for that reason. And then it becomes about, who are you? What is your identity? He's a father, and he's interested in other businesses. He has some interest in management. Are there enough things in your life that you can find joy out there without having to get into a cage and fight another man for joy? And all the accolades and stuff that comes through it. Looks like Tito has that. And Tito will probably find some other really interesting endeavors and projects to work on. And his body is beat up. And even a couple years ago, we had him in here. It was a real pleasure to have Tito here, and he was very kind and very generous with us. And
he seemed banged up.
But he seemed banged up then. And we were still over at the other side of the studio, standing up at 4 years ago this is. And his body was, his mobility was decreased in his shoulders and his back and his hips. And he was moving a little slow. So you hope that for his health too, that this is probably the end. But it's always up to the fighter. We live in a free society where you can do what you want.
Tito Ortiz will go down as one of the most important figures in all of mixed martial arts history.